Bedford Spirit, the place to hear about teaching and learning in our school. So joining me this week are two members of staff talking to us all about the theme of exams. Now, for our Year 11s, we have mock exams looming on the horizon, but actually every Bedford student will have an exam over the course of this year at some time or another. And they can be stressful places, stressful things for our students. So our two special guests this week are Mrs. Hazelden, our Wellbeing Officer, and Mrs. Swain, our Director of Learning, with the partial responsibility for exams. So welcome both of you.
Hello, bye.
And I want to start with the question about stress. Now, in our mental health podcast recently, we talked about stress not always being a negative thing, not always being a bad thing. So is stress always a bad thing, Mrs. Swain?
Actually, it isn't. So to experience stress is understandable and normal for students around exam time. In fact, it's your body's way of saying that something important is about to happen. Good stress is short term and it can be a really great motivator and it can give you that get up and go. It can focus your energy and enhance performance. However, stress is not beneficial when the pressure becomes overwhelming. The good news is that you can learn to cope with this effectively by using the different strategies that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and you're right, because sometimes, and maybe think of this in an exam situation, if you've got those physical signs of panic, like sweating, like dizziness, like a racing heart, it can be quite scary, can't it? And what can students do to help with these symptoms?
The first thing always to remember is that when students find themselves with any of these symptoms, it's not life-threatening. These are normal but uncomfortable emotions that leave us feeling out of control, but they can be controlled. In exam situations, if possible beforehand, get some fresh air. Also, find someone to talk to who you trust. Maybe walk and talk for a few minutes to help regulate anxious emotions. Someone to help you to slow down your breathing. Staying calm is the most important.
That's really good advice. So for my child, what can I do if they're feeling in the lead up to that overwhelmed with revision, not knowing what to start first, a bit overwhelmed with workload? What can I do to help my child in that situation?
I would say firstly, talk about it. So with family, friends or teachers, because sometimes just getting it off your chest can really help. Now, we've mentioned this in a previous podcast, but there's lots of support in school to help you if you feel overwhelmed. So we have Motivation Monday with Mrs. Rooney at break time, which is for general revision support. We've also got Study Club, which is open until 5 every Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. And I think the key thing is to ask Bedford staff for help. That's what we're there for. Please don't suffer in silence. Another key thing is that planning can help you to feel less overwhelmed. So every student has a revision timetable, which contains a weekly action plan and a timetable for students to plan out their time. Now, if you've lost the revision timetable, please do ask former tutors for another one. So we start by writing the to-do list in the action plan. So we can start by adding the revision set on Frog for that week. And as parents, you can support with this process. Then students can add to the list any specific gaps they want to close. But the key thing is don't overload that list. Then you simply plan out what you're going to complete that week using the timetable. Something important to remember though, at this point of Year 11, there is bound to be lots of knowledge gaps. And you can't possibly close them all at once. And I think that's what makes students feel really panicky and overwhelmed. So start small. Revision is about taking those small steps. When you're revising, please take regular breaks and complete it in small chunks. Again, this can help you stop feeling overwhelmed. And don't put it off. Make a start and you really will feel so much better. Doing something small is better than doing nothing at all.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important to block out some time for self-care. Anything that can support you staying focused but relaxed at the same time. Maybe go for a walk, play with a pet, to listen to some music. Try things that you've not tried before. Make a healthy snack maybe. It's important to take regular breaks. There are so many apps that students can use on their phones, and we all know that they flake being on their phones. So to help with mindfulness and staying calm, we have a helpful leaflet in school that lists the apps that all students should have being provided with in forms. But if not, I have a large bundle that I'm happy to share, and these apps help with mindfulness and self-care.
Sure, that bundle of leaflets will be very popular, Mrs. Hazelden. So what about the night before an exam then? What can I do to get myself ready?
Well, it's really important to eat well, because remember that food is fuel, but don't eat too late because this can affect your sleep. Be prepared. So every student has an exam timetable. So firstly, make sure you know what the exam is the next day. And do you know what the exam is going to test you on? Do you know the time of the exam? So making sure you know this information. Have you got the equipment you need? Get everything ready the night before because you don't want to be rushing around the morning after. Plan how you will get to school and make sure you know you will arrive in plenty of time. What is also really important is don't try and cram revision the night before. Don't try and pull an all-nighter because that's going to cause more panic. Do complete some revision by all means, but not excessively, not an excessive amount. Give yourself time to wind down before you want to sleep. If your mind is still really active for revision, this will make it difficult to fall asleep. Exercise and fresh air is really great, not right before bed though. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Avoid things that can affect sleep, such as caffeine and energy drinks. Please remember, don't use mobile phones at bedtime because the blue light from a mobile phone can suppress the production of melatonin, which is the hormone that's released in the evening to help you feel tired and ready for sleep. Also, try and relax before going to bed. So things might be like have a nice bubble bath, put on a face mask, watch your favourite TV show, read a book.
Another good technique to use is box breathing. You will get the most benefit if you do it regularly as part of your daily routine. You can do it standing up, sitting in a chair that supports your back, or lying on the floor or on a bed. The important thing here is to be as comfortable as possible. If you're lying down, place your arms a little bit away from your sides with the palms of your hands facing upwards. Let your legs be straight, or if you're sitting down, bend your knees so that your feet are flat on the floor. Then, let your breath flow as deep into your tummy as is comfortable without forcing it. Try breathing in through your nose for 5, hold for 5, and then slowly breathe out through your mouth again for 5. Keep doing this for at least 5 minutes if you can. Concentrating on breathing can lower your body temperature and it can slow your heart rate. It helps to regulate emotions and it can put you in a more positive mood and hopefully give you a sense of calm. Another technique that some of our students use is to focus on the senses. So again, start with the number 5 and name 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste.
Okay, so I'm ready. I've had a good night's sleep. What about the morning of the exam then?
So it's really important that you've set your alarm the night before and then make sure you've set it early enough to give you plenty of time to get ready and to get to school on time. Make sure that you have a healthy breakfast and avoid sugary snacks and energy drinks because these will not help exam performance at all. Because whilst there will be an initial energy boost, there's going to be a crash or slump after about 30 minutes, which will leave students feeling lethargic, which is not what we need for an exam. Give yourself plenty of time to get to school and don't forget that equipment that you packed the night before. And you also need to be mindful of your own needs. So some students find it really helpful to discuss revision with friends before the exam, and some would rather quietly reflect themselves. So I think students really need to be mindful of what they need before an exam. So if it's chatting with friends, revising with friends, then do that. But if you want to sit quietly, then do that also.
So what about straight after an exam then, when they've had the exam, they've gone through the process calmly, and everyone's coming out of the hall at the end and everybody wants to talk about how they've got on. So what's best to handle that?
So again, this really does depend on the individual. Lots of students find comfort in chatting with a friend afterwards and others don't. Now, my own personal view is that it isn't really helpful to dissect every single part of the exam and compare yourself with others.
Right.
And quite often, students will say, I found that really easy, and it's not really a true reflection of what happened anyway. So discussions like this will only lead to further stress. So the exam is done, it's in the past. So after the exam, my advice is just move on and talk about something else.
I guess everyone's got their way of handling it, haven't they? So exam panic, it's important that students have got the tools, the natural tools to channel their own negative thoughts away. So what strategies can they use to get rid of those negative thoughts?
So negative thoughts, they really do get in the way of our ability to focus on what's actually important. So it's a really good strategy to practice redirecting your negative thoughts. So let me give you an example. So a negative thought might be, I failed the last time and I panicked, I'm going to fail again. So an example of redirecting that negative thought would be, I have control over my emotion and I will focus on the knowledge I've gained from studying. And I think it's key. Don't wait until exam day to practice redirecting your negative thoughts. Make it something that you do all the time. Develop coping statements which remind you of what to do in stressful situations. So example, if I get anxious, I will use my breathing technique. If I get stuck, I will calmly reread the question. If I'm still stuck, I will move on to the next question and come back to it. Everyone experiences exam stress. I can do this. I can handle this. Now, something else you might want to try, which does sound a little strange, but bear with me. This is a strategy recommended by psychology professor Ethan Kross. Now, research suggests that if you refer to yourself in the second person, you, and by name, rather than using the first person, I, this can help to improve your response in a stressful situation. So an example would be, Michelle, if you get anxious, you will use the breathing technique. Michelle, if you are stuck, you will calmly read the question again. It does sound a bit out there, but research proves it works. So again, start practicing this now.
Well, that's really clever. I love that. And so you mentioned freezing, that moment where you freeze in an exam. If my child does have that sort of experience and they do freeze in an exam and their mind goes blank, what should they do next?
Please don't panic. So calmly reread the question more than once if necessary. If you're still feeling panicky, pause and breathe. After 90 seconds, your adrenaline will have subsided. Your fight, flight, freeze mode can take this amount of time to calm down before we can think straight. If you're still stuck, calmly move on to the next question and try again later. Never leave a question blank. Even if you think you're not writing quality, always get something down. One thing you can guarantee is if you write nothing, you will get 0 marks. But if you give it a go, the chances are that you will get some marks. Redirect your thoughts like we talked about earlier. Don't keep staring at the question. Look up. Research suggests that this helps. And remember, if this happens, it doesn't mean it will always happen. We've seen lots of students overcome exam freeze and get fantastic results.
Absolutely. So over to you, Mrs. Hazelden. What can we do at school to help? If someone's struggling and they need some help, what can we offer them in school?
Yeah, so it's so important to talk to someone if you are struggling. And that goes for all students. Try and go to someone that you feel the most comfortable speaking to. It may be your form teacher or a teacher that you feel relaxed in lesson with. But remember that when students arrive at school each morning, their first contact is always their pastoral support team. So their PGO, their pastoral manager, there's always a support team ready to welcome students into school at the start of every day. And if they can't help straight away, they can pass them over to somebody who can. So they must speak as soon as they come to the gate and talk to someone.
Okay. And as a parent, in the evenings or the morning before, when school isn't around, what can I do to help my child if I know they're going to be feeling panicky?
Well, I think there's a recurring theme here. Talk to your child about it.
Yeah.
Support them with their revision by helping them to plan. Encourage them to use the support at school. And we actually have an email that you can use if you want to reach out for revision support, which is revision@bedford.wigan.sch.uk. Start with small steps. And I think it's really important to reassure them that they are not defined by their grades.
Yeah. So it's important to have a healthy work-life balance, isn't it? So what advice would you give to help any student achieve this?
Yes, it is important to balance work, rest, and personal life during exams. Just focusing on revision only is not healthy and will result in students becoming burned out and stressed. Be kind to yourself. Think about other things like exercise, meeting with friends, eating healthily, being creative, having a good night's sleep. All these things play a part of staying positive. Be kind to yourself. Not every day will go to plan, and that's okay.
It sounds like this is something I'd like to find out a bit more about. Are there any books or websites that would be useful for parents or for students to read more of this sort of thing?
A useful book that I've read recently is called Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig. Now, it isn't actually just about exam stress. It's not about exam stress at all, actually. It's about tips to help us to feel calmer and happier in this hectic world that we live in. And I think that both students and parents would find that useful. Also, Young Minds is a great website that does have a specific section about exam stress. Mrs. Hazelden, what about you?
Yeah, there is a great app called No Unity. It's a revision app that Year 11 students are using. They've actually showed it to me, and I think it's brilliant. So students can share quality revision notes, which can support, supporting each other, and they can make files so that on the last minute, on the night before, they can look over their notes and just bring those, to the forefront of their mind. I do think it's really helpful.
So that's No Unity, that app, yeah.
No Unity.
And if any parents out there are concerned, just this email again for people who need it, revision@bedford.wigan.sch.uk. So any final pieces of advice on exams and exam stress today?
Absolutely. So I would like students to know you're important. These exams do not define you. We want you to leave school knowing that you've tried your best, but we also want to make sure that you are happy and healthy. In all of this, you are most important.
Yes. And if you do try your best and you reach out for support if you need it, then your best is good enough.
And that's a lovely place to finish. Thank you so much for your expert and your input today in this podcast. It's been really, really useful to hear your tips and ideas. And I hope it has helped you with your child at home as well. Don't fear those exams. They will be fine, and just do their best and keep learning. So thanks again for joining us, and see you next time.